Welcome back, Battletech enthusiasts. Now, what defines a niche mech or a niche unit? It's generally a unit that is so specialized that it is not very good in general or for almost any role except for the specific role for which it was made, at which it's the ultimate unit. And there's also the extreme counterexample that also falls into the niche category, and that is a unit that is mediocre or so-so, but can serve almost any purpose in the game, yet is not that great at any purpose that it serves. This jack of all trades, master of none, is obviously the LAM, like the Phoenix Hawk LAM, the Wasp LAM, the Stinger LAM. You can use it as a VTOL, you can use it as a mech, you can use it as a scouting unit. You can pretty much do anything you want to with it. The problem is, if you want it as a VTOL, you would have been better off getting a special VTOL, like just get a warrior or something. If you need it as a land mech, well, you would have been better off getting like a hunchback or something, etc., etc. And if you needed a scout, well, you would have been better off with a locust. In fact, the LAM mechanism on LAMs is so expensive in battle value that you can sometimes even get a land mech and a VTOL for the same price as a LAM. So you'd think that it could never possibly serve a purpose if you were to add a LAM to your force. But that's not necessarily true either. Now, new rules are coming out, and I think LAMs are going to be reintegrated into some new version of Battletech which hasn't come out yet. But I'm talking about the really old vintage rules, and the LAMs were never really that well integrated into it. And aerospace fighters were not really that well integrated into Battletech ground combat anyway. So the third mode of a LAM, which is an aerotech, doesn't even really work. That being said, LAMs are not necessarily bad. So mechs in Battletech are kind of like magic cards from like the early 90s to late 90s Magic the Gathering. That is, each individual card by itself has its features, but even if you find a card like Stasis that just seems to just utterly suck on its own, if you put it into the right deck, you can make a highly abusive Stasis deck, and that ends up leading Stasis to getting restricted or banned in tournaments, even though it's just on the face value an utterly crappy card. So it's possible that even though I personally don't find a use for LAMs, and many other people probably don't, but they are cool to have in your collection, it's entirely possible that someone, that is you, I'm looking at you right now, can come up with a really cool and abusive way to use LAMs. They might be useful for filling in the you forgot this type of unit in your team type scenario. So you just have a large force, it's a large battle value game, and you throw in a LAM just to make sure you've got all bases covered, because you might get abused in some way that you forgot about. Now, a more classic niche mech, unit, this is now going back to the master of one, jack of none, rather than the master of none, jack of all, like the LAM. This is now would be a Firestarter, for example. A Firestarter is the ultimate unit for taking out infantry. It's got flamers all over the place. It's even got flamers in the back. It's got flamers everywhere. So the Firestarter, very effective at taking out infantry, but it's kind of weak against mechs. And that is for its battle value and weights and its size. It has all these weapons, so you imagine it's powerful, but it's got no armor, and it really is just kind of a light mech. You think that it's like a medium mech or something, but it's really just a light mech, and it is costly. So again, it's not so great. And the same thing with the Vulcan. It's a specialized anti-infantry unit, not that great against mechs. Then we've got the Partisan Ac2, which is a highly specialized anti-air. You can also use AC5, but the AC2 is better for anti-air for the range. The next niche unit is the Stinger. It's too weak to really engage any other mech, even other 20-ton mechs, but it's got machine guns, so it kind of fills in the gap of you need anti-infantry. Now, for transports, the Karnov is just the ultimate transport. It can carry 2 foot infantry or 1 jump infantry, which you can drop from midair. An interesting unit is the cooling truck. In theory, it's got flamers, but in reality, it can't really defend itself unless you're counting on critical hits from flamers destroying something. Its effectiveness is something I have not yet been able to analyze with my computer simulations. It's kind of hard because it only works when it's teamed up with something that tends to overheat. This would be another opportunity for you to discover the abusive use of the cooling truck. My guess it probably would work well with awesomes or longbows. Next up, the Goblin. Now this is a fighting vehicle, a support vehicle, but it's a sizable amount of battle value. Its main purpose is to drop off a squad, which might be used as a spotter of some kind, and then it kind of fights wherever it's needed. I mean, as a reasonable fighting vehicle, but you could get a better fighting vehicle for almost the same battle value, so it's falling into the niche category. And finally, we have the Maxim hover transport. Now, this can carry a whole platoon. It's sort of similar to the Goblin in that for the same battle value, you could get better vehicles or more powerful vehicles. But because it has the ability to drop off a whole platoon, it has interesting potential. So this is your chance to build another list or deck, if you want to think of them of mechs and vehicles as cards, that could create an abusive combo.